He was 11, standing outside the school gym, holding a folder with a math certificate inside. 5 minutes later, 2 officers had his face pressed to the concrete, screaming at him to stop resisting. His mother arrived just in time to see the cuffs tighten, but not in time to stop the lie that followed. That he had matched the description, that he had fought back, that he was dangerous. But what they didn't know, not the cops, not the school, not even the judge, was who his mother really was and what she was about to do. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching us from. Rain tapped softly against the windshield as Dana Hughes sat in her parked car, watching the front doors of Oak Ridge Middle School. It was 3:29 p.m. Caleb should have been out by now. Her fingers tapped against the steering wheel as she glanced at the school entrance again. No sign of him. She reached for her coffee cup. Cold. Bitter. Just like the morning had started. Dana checked her phone. No messages. No alerts. No missed calls. Strange. Caleb was never late. Not once in his 11 years had he kept her waiting. He was the kind of boy who worried about the smallest rules. The kind who apologized if he dropped a pencil in class. The kind who asked before opening the fridge. She stepped out of the car, rain misting her hair, and started walking toward the gymnasium. That's where the awards ceremony was being held today, a small event for students who'd placed in the district math contest. Caleb had taken second place. She had told him she'd wait outside to give him space to celebrate with his friends. But something didn't feel right. As Dana rounded the building, she slowed. 2 police cruisers sat at the curb, one with lights flashing. A crowd had gathered near the gym steps, parents, staff, maybe a dozen kids. Something had happened. She felt it in her chest. Then she saw it. A boy, face down on the pavement, hands behind his back. Rain soaked his hoodie. A knee pressed into his spine. Caleb. Her legs moved before her mind caught up. Caleb, she shouted, her voice slicing through the murmurs. A second officer stepped in her path. Ma'am, back up. That's my son. What are you doing? He's a child. The first officer didn't even look up. He tightened the cuffs on Caleb's wrists. Stop resisting. Caleb wasn't resisting. He was sobbing. I didn't do anything. His voice cracked. Dana tried to push past, but the officer's hand caught her shoulder. Step back or you'll be detained. She froze. People watched but said nothing. A teacher she recognized, Mr. Kessler, math, stood frozen near the door, his hands stuffed in his jacket. Their eyes met. He looked away. He matched the description, the officer said. Black male, blue hoodie, acting suspicious. Call came from a store down the block. He's 11. He's wearing his school hoodie. So are 20 other boys. The officer ignored her. He radioed in calmly. Suspect apprehended. Juvenile. Transporting to precinct. Caleb's folder, the one that had held his award, lay open in a puddle. Rain soaked the certificate until the ink ran. His glasses were cracked. Dana's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. Not to film, not to scream, but to activate something no one here knew existed. Because what no one, not the cops, not the school, not even her son, knew, was who she used to be, and what she still had the power to do. The holding cell smelled like wet metal and bleach. Caleb sat on the edge of the bench, shivering, his arms still sore from the handcuffs. Across the room, a teenage boy with tangled hair and no shoelaces stared at the floor. No one spoke. An hour had passed. Maybe 2. No one told him what was happening. When Dana arrived at the precinct, her coat was soaked through. She walked straight to the front desk. My son was brought in from Oak Ridge Middle School. His name is Caleb Hughes. He's 11. The officer behind the glass barely looked up. Name of the arresting officer? I don't know, but I want to see my son. Now. You'll have to wait, ma'am. He's being processed. Processed for what? The officer shrugged. Resisting arrest, suspicion of attempted theft. Minor matched the description of a suspect reported near a convenience store. Dana stared at him. He was at a math ceremony. In a school gym. There are teachers who can confirm that. The officer raised his hand. Look, I'm not the one who brought him in. If you want to file a complaint, there's a form. No. I want to speak to your supervisor. The man leaned back in his chair. Supervisor's out. I can pass along a message. Dana turned away before she exploded. Her jaw clenched so tight she thought her teeth might crack. She pulled out her phone and called the school. The main line rang 5 times before someone picked up. Oak Ridge Middle School, how can I help you? This is Dana Hughes. My son, Caleb Hughes, was arrested outside your gym this afternoon. He was attending the math awards. Pause. I'll connect you with administration. Another pause. Then a new voice. Ms. Hughes, this is Assistant Principal Larkins. I heard what happened. I was just about to reach out. Were you there? I. I arrived after he was taken away. Who was present from your staff? Mr. Kessler. He was supervising the students outside. Of course. Dana's voice dropped. Did he say anything? I'm not sure. There was a lot of confusion. He saw the arrest. He knows Caleb didn't do anything. Larkins hesitated. Ms. Hughes, I understand your frustration, but this is a police matter now. The school cannot interfere with. Dana hung up. Her hands trembled again. She hadn't felt this kind of rage in years. Not since. No. She pushed the memory down. A door opened near the back of the lobby. A tall man in uniform stepped out, a badge clipped to his vest. His expression was firm, detached. Miss Hughes? I'm Lieutenant Foster. Your son is being held for questioning. Due to his age, we're waiting on a youth counselor before we proceed. Questioning for what? The store owner reported a juvenile attempting to open the cash drawer and fleeing when approached. Your son matched the description, black male, blue hoodie. Dana's voice was ice. There were 30 boys in blue hoodies at that school today. I'm just relaying the facts, and you'll be relaying them to my attorney shortly. Foster raised an eyebrow. Are you currently represented? Dana didn't answer. Instead, she pulled out her wallet. A small, worn card slid from a hidden sleeve. She handed it to him. Foster read it. His posture changed. Barely, but it changed. I see. Dana took the card back and said nothing. For now. Because this wasn't about resisting arrest. This was about resisting visibility. About a system that didn't blink before forcing a child to the ground. And before the day ended, the system would know exactly who it had just touched. Dana stood in front of a metal door for 7 minutes before it opened with a buzz. The female officer who greeted her didn't smile. You'll have 15 minutes with your son. Do not discuss the investigation. Dana didn't answer. She walked through the hallway, every step echoing too loud, like the building was built to intimidate. They brought her into a sterile interview room with cinderblock walls. Then Caleb. He looked smaller than she remembered. His hoodie had been taken. His hands fidgeted in his lap. His eyes were red, but he stood up the second he saw her. Mom. She knelt and wrapped her arms around him before the officer could object. He held on like he hadn't breathed in hours. Are you okay? She whispered. He nodded into her shoulder, but she felt the tremble in his ribs. Did they hurt you? A long pause. Then, softly, the one with the mustache pushed me down. I said I didn't do anything, but he said I was getting smart. I wasn't even moving. Dana pulled back to look at him. You didn't say anything else? I told them I had a certificate, but they didn't care. He pointed to a bruise near his collarbone. Dana stood slowly. Her jaw locked. The officer in the room cleared her throat. I'm going to remind you not to speak about. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to my son. The officer said nothing more. Dana looked down at Caleb. You are going to be fine. Do you hear me? He nodded, but the fear was still there. Deep. Settled. When their time ended, she kissed his forehead and waited for the door to shut before turning around. She walked back to the lobby, pulled out her phone, and dialed a number she hadn't used in 6 years. It rang twice. A voice answered. You know this line isn't for personal calls. I'm not calling as Dana Hughes. Pause. Understood. She gave the name of the officer. The time. The precinct. The charge. Then added. And I need it off the record. No flags. No leaks. Are you reactivating? Dana closed her eyes. Then opened them. No. But I'm invoking Clause 8. Another pause. You're sure? She looked toward the hallway her son had just disappeared into. Yes. I'm sure. She hung up. Behind her, Lieutenant Foster reappeared. He held a clipboard. We're going to need your signature to release him into your custody, pending further inquiry. Dana looked at the line he pointed to. One signature. One gesture to end this nightmare. She took the pen, then stopped. You're not charging him? We're reviewing all angles. The store owner can't positively ID him. But the officer claims resistance, so it's still in review. Resistance to what? Foster shifted slightly. You're free to consult legal representation if. Dana snapped the pen in her hand. I'll sign. But let me be clear. You touched the wrong child. And I am not done. He opened his mouth, but no words came. She signed, handed the clipboard back, then walked out the door with nothing but silence behind her. Dana didn't sleep that night. She sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, a copy of the incident report open on her laptop. It had been emailed to her just before midnight, courtesy of the courtesy system request she filed under her old clearance ID. She wasn't supposed to have access anymore, but she did. Caleb slept down the hall. His breathing was uneven. She could hear him roll over every few minutes. The file was thin. Too thin. Page 1. Suspicious juvenile, male, matching suspect description. Observed loitering near convenience store, then seen running towards school property. Officers approached for questioning. Juvenile failed to comply with verbal orders and became physically non-compliant. Dana stopped reading. Physically non-compliant. Her son, 11 years old, wearing his school award badge, with a certificate in one hand and broken glasses in the other. The report made it sound like he'd lunged at them. She opened the audio log. The body cam audio from Officer Bell, the mustached one. It began mid-interaction. No context. Just shouting. On the ground. Now. Stop moving. A child's voice. I didn't do anything, sir. Hands behind your back. A thud. Then silence. She paused. Rewound. Played it again. The file was timestamped 7 minutes after the award ceremony ended. The school was less than 50 feet away. She pulled up the city map. The convenience store was 4 blocks in the opposite direction. Someone had lied. And it wasn't Caleb. She opened a second tab and started typing. Internal complaint protocol. But not the public version. The encrypted one, buried under 7 login layers. She still remembered how to get in. Once inside, she downloaded the officer's full disciplinary file. And what she found wasn't surprising. 6 excessive force complaints. 3 dismissed due to insufficient evidence. 2 marked, resolved internally. 1 still open. A pattern. She leaned back in her chair. Rain tapped the windows again. Then a notification blinked. A message. Anonymous. Subject. Footage you didn't see. No sender name. She clicked. It was security footage from the school's own cameras. Timestamped. Clear. It showed the front of the gym. Parents gathering. Students walking out. And Caleb, holding his certificate, standing alone. Then the officers appear. No one else is running. No one else is even moving quickly. They walk straight to Caleb. No hesitation. One grabs his wrist before speaking. Caleb flinches, tries to pull back. The second officer tackles him. Dana paused the video. The timeline had been falsified. They never saw a suspect. They didn't follow anyone. They chose. And they chose her son. The phone rang. Blocked number. She picked up. Clause 8 has been accepted, said a familiar voice. Do you want it contained, or do you want it public? Dana stared at the frozen frame of her son being slammed into concrete. Contained. For now. But prepare both. The voice nodded. They'll respond soon. Be ready. I already am. She hung up, closed the laptop, and whispered into the dark. You picked the wrong child. At exactly 8:12 a.m., Dana received a knock at her door. Not a buzz. Not a ring. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. She checked the hallway camera feed before opening. 2 men in plain suits. No ID visible. No name tags. She didn't invite them in. Just opened the door enough to speak. Yes? The taller one spoke first. Ms. Hughes, we're here regarding the internal complaint you submitted last night. We'd like to ask you a few questions. She didn't blink. I didn't submit anything publicly. That's correct. Which is why we'd like to keep it that way. The other man, shorter, with a tight smile, added. These kinds of reports, especially when they escalate to Clause 8 territory, tend to attract unwanted attention. Dana crossed her arms. So you know what clause I invoked? We know what you used to be. And we know what you walked away from. She looked over her shoulder briefly. Caleb was in the living room, watching cartoons, unaware. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. You came to intimidate me? We came to caution you. This situation is still small. If you move quietly, it can stay that way. Dana smiled without humor. You think this is still about quiet? You think anyone wins when the story becomes public? The precinct gets scrutiny. Officers get suspended. Sure. But the city tightens. They close ranks. They protect their own. The shorter man leaned closer. And kids like your son? They end up remembered as the one who caused the stir, not the one who got hurt. Dana's voice turned low. Are you threatening a child? We're telling you what happens when this becomes a headline instead of a conversation. She took a breath. Measured. You think I care about headlines? He hesitated. We think you care about your son. About what happens when schools stop calling back. When records get flagged. When people stop returning your messages. Dana took out her phone. Pressed record. Held it between them. Say that again. Both men went silent. She lowered the phone. Thought so. They turned to leave. No badges. No names. No proof they were ever there. But Dana knew the type. Internal liaisons. Contracted. They didn't threaten people. They advised. She went back inside and sat beside Caleb on the couch. Everything okay? He asked, eyes still fixed on the screen. Everything's fine. But it wasn't. At 10:22 a.m., the principal called. Miss Hughes, I just wanted to update you. Caleb's return to school is going to take a bit longer than expected. Why? There's concern about disruption. Some parents expressed discomfort after the police presence yesterday. Dana's voice dropped. Discomfort with what? Pause. The attention. The conflict. You understand. The district doesn't want unnecessary tension right now. So my son is suspended? No. Just advised to stay home until the matter's reviewed. Dana smiled bitterly. There it was. The second punishment. First they tackled him. Now they'd vanish him. She ended the call, opened her laptop, and began drafting the first legal motion. This time, it would not be anonymous. The legal motion was filed at 11:03 a.m. By 11:17, the city clerk's server flagged it, not because of content, but because of the authorization code embedded in the metadata, a code not seen since 2018. By 11:40, someone in the Department of Risk Management was on the phone with Internal Affairs, and by noon, Dana Hughes received an email with no subject line and one sentence. Withdraw the petition before 3 p.m., or the file gets reopened. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened a private browser and accessed the archive where her old clearance credentials still granted access. By file 47A. It was a sealed deposition, one she'd helped write, not as a lawyer, not even as a federal employee, but as a ghost. There were people in that file who were never named. People protected by protocol, not principle. People who owed their safety to the silence she once chose. If they were threatening to reopen it, that meant one thing. They were afraid. Because if she spoke, the protections collapsed. And not just for her. She closed the tab, opened a second screen, began writing again. This time, not emotion. A summary brief with embedded references, timestamped video, audio transcripts, and preliminary analysis. Language clean. Precise. Cold. She sent it to 3 inboxes. All government. None of them local. At 2:42 p.m., her phone rang. The number was scrambled. She answered anyway. You filed without a redaction review, said a sharp male voice. No names were used. Only initials. Still a breach. Only if someone's trying to hide something. Silence. Then, what's your goal, Dana? She looked out the window. Caleb was in the backyard, bouncing a basketball slowly, one hand still bandaged. Justice. The voice didn't laugh, didn't argue, just asked. Personal or systemic? She didn't blink. Personal. Always. Click. The call ended. She got up and walked outside. How's your arm? She asked. Caleb shrugged. Okay. The bruise is better. She sat beside him on the steps. Do you know why this happened? He nodded. 'Cause I look like someone they don't trust. The words hit harder than anything else that week. She pulled him close, let his head rest on her shoulder. Then, after a moment, we're going back to school tomorrow. But they said, doesn't matter. We're not asking. He didn't smile. But he didn't argue either. At 3:11 p.m., a reply landed in her inbox. Subject, reconsidered. Body, pending internal review. Officer Bell is on administrative leave effective immediately. No apology. No admission. Just strategy. But it was movement. And it meant someone, somewhere, had just realized. She wasn't bluffing. At 9 a.m. sharp, Dana walked through the front doors of Oak Ridge Middle School with Caleb beside her. His backpack was light. Most of his books had been left behind during the arrest. The front desk receptionist blinked twice when she saw them. Miss Hughes, we weren't expecting Caleb today. That's your problem, Dana said calmly. He's a student. He's here. He'll be attending all his classes as scheduled. The receptionist glanced nervously at the hallway. One moment. She picked up the phone and whispered into the receiver. 2 minutes later, Assistant Principal Larkins appeared. Sweating. Miss Hughes, I think we should discuss. We'll discuss nothing in a hallway. If you have concerns, we'll have that conversation in your office. But my son is going to first period. She turned to Caleb. Room 206. Go on. He hesitated, then nodded and disappeared down the corridor. Larkins gestured awkwardly toward his office. Inside, he closed the door behind them. I understand you're upset, Ms. Hughes. But we're under pressure from the district. We were advised to. I don't care what you were advised. She opened a folder and placed 3 documents on his desk. What's this? Civil liability notice. Federal notice of pending action. And a preemptive restraining order barring this institution from barring access to a minor without due process. Larkins paled. This is serious. Good. It's meant to be. But surely you understand. We were just protecting yourselves. Not him. Dana leaned forward. Do you know what he said to me last night? Larkins shook his head. He said, they didn't believe me, even when I said I was good. Not when I said I was innocent. When I said I was good. She paused. Do you understand what that does to a child? The man's mouth opened, then closed. Dana gathered the documents and stood. If any staff member speaks to my son about the incident, detains him, or isolates him in any form, you'll be dealing with a federal civil suit. Personally. She walked out. 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed. A number she hadn't saved. She answered. Ms. Hughes, this is Marla Din from the city attorney's office. I understand you've initiated multiple filings across state and federal channels. Before this escalates further, we'd like to propose a meeting. With who? Deputy DA Randolph, Captain Nielsen, and myself. Dana considered it. Then, I'll bring 1 document. You'll bring nothing. I'm not sure that's it. I don't care. Click. She ended the call. This wasn't about documents. It was about posture. And posture was everything when the only tool you had was truth sharpened into a blade. She opened her laptop. On the screen was a photo, Caleb, smiling, holding his certificate, taken an hour before the cuffs went on. She opened the complaint file again and wrote the subject line. Motion to unseal identity of off-camera officer number 2. The conference room was cold, not in temperature, in silence. 3 people sat across from Dana. Deputy District Attorney Randolph, Captain Nielsen of the precinct, and Marla Din from the city attorney's office. They offered no handshake. No pleasantries. Dana placed a single document on the table. A certified affidavit of Caleb's exact location and timestamp during the arrest, supported by school surveillance. Randolph glanced at it. That's not admissible unless it's entered formally. Dana smiled slightly. Who said I was entering it? Captain Nielsen leaned forward. Ms. Hughes, we appreciate your concern. But making this a legal war helps no one. Dana said nothing. Marla Din folded her hands. Here's what we're offering. Officer Bell will remain on leave. Caleb's school record will remain clean. And in return, you agree not to pursue civil action. Not now. Not later. Dana blinked. So, you want me to stay quiet, in exchange for you pretending this never happened? That's not what we said. But that's what you meant. Randolph sighed. You're not going to win this the way you think. The system isn't built for moments. It's built for attrition. For delay. Dana tilted her head. Then let's test its patience. Marla's tone shifted. If you go forward, we will investigate your background. Every filing. Every detail. Clause 8 or not. Dana leaned back. That a threat? It's a guarantee. Captain Nielsen spoke again. You weren't always a civilian, Ms. Hughes. You know better than most what kind of damage long-term exposure brings to a child, to a case, to a name. Dana's voice turned ice cold. Do not say his name. They fell silent. She gathered the document and stood. This meeting is over. Randolph called after her. You're choosing a path with no allies. She paused in the doorway. Good. Then left. By the time she got home, a letter had been hand-delivered. No stamp. No return address. It was a notice of audit. From the Department of Financial Compliance. Not even a real agency, just a task force created after September 11th to intimidate whistleblowers. She laughed once. A dry sound. They were playing old games. She went into her bedroom, opened a locked drawer, and pulled out a box. Inside, for black ID tags, 2 burner drives, and a folded letter from someone who once told her. Use this only when the silence gets louder than the lie. She placed the letter aside, then powered on one of the drives. A small program launched. No interface. No trace. Only one purpose. Locate systems that were supposed to be sealed and reveal who had opened them. Within 30 seconds, her screen blinked. Your complaint file has been accessed from a restricted IP in the governor's legal office. So now they were watching her and each other. She picked up her phone, typed one line. They're burning the paper trail. Go to fallback. Message sent. It was time to stop pushing and start pulling. At 6:14 a.m., her phone buzzed once. Unknown sender. Check the news. Dana didn't have to. By 6:20, her name was trending locally. By 6:32, her old position, the one she'd left behind quietly, without fanfare, was plastered across every second-rate outlet desperate for a scoop. Former federal intelligence analyst behind lawsuit against police. Not lawyer. Not mother. Analyst. Government insider. They leaked her personnel history, carefully edited, and framed it like a conspiracy. Photos of Caleb. Blurred, but recognizable. Comments exploded online. Is this about justice or revenge? She's exploiting her own son. Probably trained him to resist. Dana didn't flinch. Not yet. But when Caleb came into the kitchen 15 minutes later, eyes wide, holding her old ID card in his hand. Mom, were you in the FBI? She took the card gently from his fingers. I was. A long time ago. Why didn't you tell me? She sat down beside him. Because it doesn't change who I am now. Or who you are. He didn't respond. Just stared at the counter. She could see it in his shoulders, the weight of attention already pressing down. They had found the only place she was still human. And struck it. By 8 a.m., her employer called. A nonprofit research consultancy she'd worked for since stepping away from government service. Dana, we're receiving pressure from board members. Some are uncomfortable with your current media exposure. We're not saying you did anything wrong, but... She didn't wait for the end. I'll clear out my desk. Click. At 8:37 a.m., the school called. Not about Caleb. About her. Ms. Hughes, we've received multiple parent complaints. Some have expressed concern that your background may present a conflict with the environment we're trying to maintain. What environment is that? Pause. Stability. Neutrality. Dana exhaled slowly. Are you asking me to stay away? We're asking you to consider what's best for Caleb. The less attention drawn to his presence, the easier his transition back will be. She hung up without a word. The phone slipped from her hand. She stared at the table. Then her hands. Still steady. At 9:02, a message pinged from a secure line she hadn't used since her clearance expired. They've breached your internal logs. Everything is exposed. She replied with 2 words. Good. Burn it. At 10:13 a.m., she received a text from an old contact. Only 4 words. I read the transcript. That meant he'd seen the sealed affidavit. The one she'd written after leaving the agency. The one they were still afraid of. She typed a single reply. They used a child. No answer. She didn't need one. By noon, she had nothing left. No job. No cover. No protection. Just her son. And the truth. And sometimes, that's all war requires. The courtroom was almost empty. No press. No crowd. Just a narrow hallway of silence and the hum of the ceiling lights above. Dana sat at the back, not at the plaintiff's table. She wasn't the one speaking today. Her motion had already been submitted, stamped, and entered into the record 2 days prior. Today, the city's attorneys were on defense. They had requested a private dismissal hearing. Not public. Not televised. No transcripts released. And that was exactly what Dana wanted. At the front, the judge flipped through a stack of papers. He didn't look impressed. Officer Bell has officially resigned from his position? Marla Din nodded stiffly. Effective immediately. And you're requesting dismissal on grounds of moot remedy? Correct, Your Honor. With the officer no longer serving, the claim for injunctive relief is no longer applicable. The judge glanced down again. But the civil claim remains intact? Dana spoke now. Calm. Measured. I'm withdrawing it, Your Honor. Marla blinked. So did the judge. Ms. Hughes, may I ask why? Dana stood. Because the purpose was never compensation. It was recognition. And that's been achieved. She placed a single photo on the table. Caleb. Smiling. Holding a new certificate. This time, from the school. This time, signed by the principal. This time, presented in front of a full gymnasium. No officers. No cuffs. Just applause. The judge nodded once. Then all claims are hereby dismissed. Case closed. The gavel dropped. Dana turned and walked out before anyone could say more. In the hallway, Captain Nielsen was waiting. He didn't speak. Just nodded slightly as she passed. An acknowledgement. Not of defeat, but of finality. Outside, the sun was sharp against the pavement. Caleb stood by the steps, backpack over one shoulder, squinting into the light. How'd it go? He asked. Dana took his hand. It's over. He didn't smile, but his shoulders eased. They walked toward the car in silence. Halfway there, he asked, "Are they still watching us?" Dana didn't answer. She didn't have to. He nodded, as if that was enough. As they drove home, her phone buzzed once. A final message. From the same anonymous source who had sent the first video. Well played. She deleted it without opening. Not because she didn't care, but because it didn't matter anymore. This war hadn't been about exposure. It had been about visibility. And now they saw her. They all saw her. But most importantly, he saw her for exactly who she was. And that was enough. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that inspire action and hope.